Greetings, assalamu alaikum to the Muslim brothers and sisters out there. This video is to address the issue because from time to time, I get a message from someone, and the people, they don't mean any harm. They seem sincere, and they express that that I shouldn't be debating, and that Muslims should not engage in this, and that Ahmadi, that was wrong, and Islam doesn't allow this. And so I wanted to address that because that position is wrong, quite frankly. And so I wanted to make this video to show the evidence that there is precedent for it, and that in fact it is enjoined by Allah himself in the Quran. So let's get right to it, and let's begin to show the evidence that it is indeed enjoined by Allah to indeed debate with non-believers, debate with the people of the book, as long as it is done in the best manner. So let's take a look at the evidence. Here we read in chapter 16 verse 125 very plainly, "Call them towards the path of your Lord with wisdom and right advice, and debate with them amicably." The Arabic word in question here is jaddil. In full it's wajadilhum, which means to dispute, argue, discourse, debate, litigate with them. It goes on further, he contended in an altercation or dispute, or litigated with him. Litigate means to actually argue with somebody, like in a court case. So that's clear that it means for the purpose of convincing the opponent. He wrangled with him. The source is given at the bottom. A later usage of the lawyers, he compared evidences in a discussion with another person or persons to see which of the evidences was preponderant. These are the various meanings of this word that this word carries. Okay, so it's clear the meaning. Further, in the lexicon, it says, hence, as a term of logic, the object of which is to convince the opponent and make him to understand who fails to apprehend the premises of the demonstration. So this is the word that's used in that verse. So it has no doubt, be of no doubt, that this verse is clearly what Allah is saying, to do exactly the meaning of this word with them. It's clear. And see, that's what makes this so important, because as you see, when you look at the language of the Quran, alhamdulillah, there's no playing around with that. When you start to get into the word, the actual language, the Arabic here, nobody can't play with that. So you see, it's clear. So anybody who wants to argue and say, oh, you can't do it, you're not supposed to. Well, look, Allah's saying to do it right there. That's the word that Allah used in that verse. And its meaning is, it means that. To debate with a person, to have a discourse, to discuss and argue with a person while showing evidences in an attempt to convince that person of your premise, of your argument, based on the discussion in which you are using evidences and proofs and in a way to convince the person. There's no doubt about that. So those who say we shouldn't be doing this and it's not part of Islam and it's not the way and all of that, whatever, look, I'm just going to put it plainly, you obviously don't know what you're speaking of. So stop speaking against what Allah has enjoined us to do. If you don't feel you can do it, then you don't do it. Okay? That might not be for you, but don't say that it's not part of Islam for anyone to be doing it when it's clearly right there in the word of Allah. The next verse is Surah 29:46, which reads, "Only dispute or debate with the people of the book in the kindest way." Strangely, in the time that I've been Muslim, even prior to getting into debates, I would see people attempt to wrongly use this verse to say that, well, you can't debate with them, you can't argue with them because of this verse. And I'm like, man, do these people not know how to read? The verse isn't saying not to debate. It's saying don't debate with them except in the best way. In other words, if you're going to do it, or when you do it, don't do it in any other way except in the best way. Not that you can't do it at all. So it's quite amazing that Muslims come up with these claims in the face of the words of Allah. That's right there. Okay, so it's saying, yes, you can do it, but do it in the best way, the best manner. Here we see, just as in the Surah 16 verse 125, the same word is used here. It's just a different derivative of it based on the the grammar formation, but it's still the same word right here. Jaddil. See again, jaddil, jaddilu. And of course, in the context, it's saying not to jaddilu except in the best manner. So in other words, it is a permission to do it, as long as it is being done in the best manner or proper manners, or in a kind way or a nice way or a proper way. So again, Allah is enjoining and allowing us to debate with, dispute with, have argumentation with the people of the book or others, as long as we do it with proper manners and in a good way. Okay? Very clear. Very clear. Now from this, the next argument that comes up is about, looking at their Bible or using their Bible. Many people wrongly use the story of Umar, where Umar was said to have been reading the Torah, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, saw him reading it, and he became upset with Umar, and then he told Umar that, if Moses were here, Moses would be following me. The problem with this, using this as a claim that we can't do, use their books, is that Umar was not reading it for any purpose. Umar wasn't reading it, to see an argument or to try to use it against them. He was just reading it. And so he had no purpose to be reading it when he has the Quran. And so the Prophet explained to him that, you don't need to be reading that. Or that was the implication of it, that, if Moses were here, he would be following the Quran, he'd be following me. But Umar had no reason to believe. But that's not the reason that those of us who debate use the Bible. We're not using it for guidance. We know that our guidance is the Quran. We're looking at it because Allah says to do so. Allah says, as I will show you, He tells you to tell these other opponents to bring their books. Now let's look. We read here in Quran chapter 46 verse 4, it says, "Say, have you considered what you call upon besides Allah? Show me what they have created of the earth, or have they a share in the heavens? Bring me a book before this, or traces of knowledge, if you are truthful." So here you can see Allah is telling the believers, the Muslims, the Prophet, etc., when speaking to others who are calling upon others besides Allah, to say, well, show me some proof of what these other gods that you believe in have created, right? Or bring me a book before this, or traces of knowledge, if you're truthful. Now, this is a challenge. This is not an empty challenge. Surely Allah knows that if this challenge is given, some people may attempt to bring you some type of book. Question is, when they bring the book, what are you supposed to do with it? Just look at the cover and say, okay, you brought a book, all right. Right? Obviously not. The implication is, challenge them to bring the book or bring some knowledge so you can examine it and look at what they're bringing. Well, of course, when we discuss with Christians or Jews or whoever, they bring their Bible. So obviously we have to look at it and see. Not looking at it for guidance, but to look at it and see their arguments and claims to see if it's backed up or is it not. And we show that their claims are not backed up and supported by their very own book. That's what we do. Very clear. Here again in another surah, Allah says, "What is the matter with you? How is it that you judge? Will you not then reflect? Or have you a clear authority? Then bring your book, if you are truthful." Once again, Allah is offering or telling us, or the Muslims, the Prophet, etc., the reader of the Quran, to what? He's questioning them about their claims. Do you have a clear authority? Then bring your book if you're truthful. Once again, this is not an empty challenge, because surely Allah knows some people are going to accept the challenge and say, okay, well, here's my book. Here's the book that I'm claiming what I believe in. Now, when they bring it, I ask you, those who claim we shouldn't be doing this or using their book or whatever, again, I repeat, we're not using their book for guidance. We're not using their book because we're looking for guidance in our lives. We're using their book because this is what they bring as an evidence to try to support their claims. However, when we look in it and examine it, we see that their claims are not substantiated. And that's why we use it. We're not using it like Umar was doing, reading it just to be reading it for no purpose whatsoever, No, we're reading it because this is what they bring to us, and we examine it and we see this is where they claim they get their authority to claim that Jesus is God, or that God is a Trinity, or the various other topics. However, when we examine it, we see that their claim, their book does not substantiate their claim. We see that when we examine it, their claim is not substantiated. Okay? So, here it is again. Allah says to bring the book. What do you think He's saying to bring the book for? You think this is just an empty talk? You think this is just like some type of rhetorical language? No, it's a challenge. He's telling them, yeah, bring the book. And of course, when they bring it, what you supposed to do? Just look at the cover? Just say, okay, I see it. There you go. No, look at it. Examine it. It's clear. The implication is there. You look at it, you examine it and see, is the truth there or is it not there? And that's it. Again, another verse, chapter 2, verse 111. And they say, none shall enter the garden except he who is a Jew or a Christian. These are their vain desires. Say, bring your proof if you are truthful. Again, notice this verse is addressing the Jews and Christians. What are they going to bring as their proof? The answer, obviously, they're going to bring the Bible. Now, when they bring it, what are you going to do? You're going to ignore it? Are you going to say, let me just see the cover of it? Are you going to just say, just hold it up and let me look at it? Or are you going to look at and examine what they point at or offer as a proof? You're not violating anything. You're not going to upset Allah. He made a challenge. He said for them to bring it. So obviously, if they bring it, you're going to have to look at it and examine and see. Well, let's see. Does it hold up to what you say? And what we have found in doing this is that obviously their claims don't hold up, which is why we do this, because we've seen the evidence and the claims that they make do not hold up. You see? So Allah knows in His wisdom. So that's why He's making the challenge, because He knows that they don't have the proof when they bring it. And so when they bring it, we can examine it and look at it, and we turn it right around against them, as you've seen us do in the debates that we have. We use their book against them, right against them. And please don't forget that we also mention verses from the Quran. The Quran is so clear that it's very simple to just mention what the Quran is, because the Quran says what it says outright. You see? So we do mention what the Quran says, and then we say, well, let's see what your book says, since you brought it, and we fulfill that requirement, and we see that it doesn't hold to what they claim. Okay? And we can go forward. I can give you a few more verses to drive the point home, that it is not wrong to look at their book when examining their challenge that they bring. Okay? Now here, this verse should be very interesting for those who claim that the hadith with Umar is a proof of prohibition of reading the Torah or the Bible. Well, look here. Allah says in Surah 3 verse 93, all food was lawful to the children of Israel, except that which Israel had forbidden to himself, before the Torah was revealed. Say, bring then the Torah and read it if you are truthful. So here now the challenge is being said. Look, they're making a claim. Tell them, okay, look, bring your Torah and read it if you're truthful. So now they come and they say, here you go, read it. Look, here's the proof. Here's the proof for our argument from the Torah. Are you violating? Are you doing what Umar did in that hadith? Or does this verse contradict that hadith? Or does that hadith contradict this verse? Well, obviously the answer is that Umar was reading it for a different reason. He wasn't reading it to see a proof. He wasn't reading it to see evidence against them or to examine their claim. He was just reading it. And so the Prophet was upset for that reason. But here, as you see, Allah is enjoining the reading or the looking at it to examine when a claim of truth is being made. You obviously have to look at it. You obviously are going to have to look at it. You're going to have to read it, examine it, not because you're looking for guidance. Again, you have the Quran for that. But because you need to examine their claim. They are making a claim and they're bringing the proof. Allah said, told them to bring the proof. They brought it. Now look at it and see, is this actual proof? Is this evidence for what you're saying, or does it go against what you're saying? I mean, it's clear. It's clear. It's right there in Allah's word. We really don't have to argue too much about it. The evidence is there. Here we see yet again, once again, Allah saying in Surah 68, verse 36 and 37, what has happened to you? How do you judge? Or have you a book wherein you read? Once again, challenging those who do not believe and questioning whether they have a book that they read. And obviously, once again, it's not just a matter of just, well, do you have a book? Can you show it? Or obviously the implication is that if you have this as evidence, then bring it forward. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what it says. Let's see what you got as evidence or proof or lack thereof. All right. So it's very clear. Again, we mentioned the Quran. The Quran is the book that we look to for guidance. But when we read the books that they bring as an evidence, we're not reading it because we're seeking guidance or because we doubt that the Quran is sufficient. We look at it to see and examine the evidence that they bring, and if so be, turn it against them and say, well, look, it doesn't say what you say. Look, in fact, here, it refutes you. It says something opposite. It doesn't guarantee you this. It doesn't say that, etc. Okay? It's used to see as an evidence against or for their argument. Okay? And of course, as Allah already knows, it's going to be against them, which is why Allah says to tell them, challenges them to bring it forward, because He is the all-knowing God, and He knows that what they bring is not going to suffice for them, as we've seen in these debates that I've had and others like myself and those prior, and of course going back to Ahmed Didat as well. Now let's take a quick look at whether the Prophet engaged in anything similar or had any discussions or, disputations with the people of the book. So one example we can look at is the meeting of the Najran delegation that met with the Prophet. This can be found in Bukhari and the Tafsir of Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir, for his Tafsir, is explanation for Surah 361, which is known as the event of the Mubahala, which dealt with, as he says here, the reason for the call to Mubahala and the revelation of the ayat from the beginning of this surah until here is that a delegation from the Christians of Najran in Yemen came to Medina to argue about Jesus, claiming that he was divine and the Son of Allah. And so they come, and obviously they arguing with the Prophet, disputation over the issue of Jesus. Is he God? Is he not God? Is he his son? Etc. So the Prophet engaged in this. Of course, he was the Prophet, so he didn't need to study and do like we have to do, because obviously he was receiving guidance, direct guidance and revelation. But nonetheless, he engaged in such. So for people to say that it wasn't the way of the Prophet and he never did this, or again, this example is right here. He engaged with them. He engaged with them and argued or disputed with them over the issue of Isa, of Jesus. Okay, so as you can, it says they came to argue with him about the issue of Jesus, claiming that Jesus was divine and the Son of Allah. And of course, the Prophet, with the aid of Allah, being directly aided, was able, he used some arguments against them. And of course, when we have these debates with them, we mention these surahs in arguing with them. And in addition to what Allah said, tell them to bring their book, we examine their book and we see that there's evidence to refute them from their own books as well, therefore using wisdom along with the arguments. And so we see that the evidence is there very strongly, right in the Quran itself, right from the words of Allah, that He enjoins the disputations and debate done in a good manner, of course, with wisdom and good speech or good preaching. But nonetheless, it's right there. The Arabic word is clear in its meaning, and so it's not something that is prohibited, as some claim, but it is rightfully enjoined by Allah Himself, to be done in the best manner, to be done with wisdom, good preaching. We see the many verses where Allah clearly challenges those who disagree to, bring their books. Many times it's there. So, those who claim that you're not supposed to be doing that, you're not supposed to be reading their book. Well, yeah, you're not supposed to be reading it as a Muslim looking for guidance in them. But again, to look into them, to examine the claims that they're making in order to refute them, expose the lies in them, it's right there. It's part of what Allah offers as the challenge to them, to bring it. And again, I repeat, these are not empty challenges. He's telling them to bring it for a reason, because obviously they're going to attempt to show something, and obviously we are to look at what they claim, look at what they bring, and you will see that when they bring these things, you can find the evidence to refute them, that the evidence is not there to support their claim, and in many cases it can be used back against them. Okay, so please don't send me any more messages about I shouldn't be doing this and it's not right and it's not the way and all that. The evidence is there. Stop letting people think for you and start thinking, because I've heard classes where people say this. So I know where some people probably get these things from, but that's the problem. Stop letting people tell you what to think. That book is right there. Allah says the Quran is easy for you to read. You have the ability, you have access to this information, you have access to read about the history of the Prophet and his life. You have the access to the Quran. You can get sources to help you with the Arabic and things like that. So it's there. Allah's word is very powerful and it speaks very clearly. All right, so stop letting people tell you things that are in contradiction to what Allah has said and enjoined. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.